What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I'm joined with my co-host Erik, and we've got our early 2021 fantasy football mock draft for you guys. The 2020 season has just come to an end, and we're already ready to move on to next season. So, without further ado, let's not waste any time. Let's hit the intro and get into this season's first mock draft. Okay, the draft is underway. I am holding the first overall pick, and Erik has the second pick. We just wanted to have the top of the board so we could tell you guys who our top two players are coming into the 2021 season based on how this year played out. Just a quick note, this is a half PPR draft, so it's our favorite style of fantasy football. We really like the balance of half PPR, whereas full PPR we feel really kind of favors wide receivers a little bit more, or pass-catching players, obviously, if you get that full point per reception. And then standard, we're not big fans of either because we think it's a little bit too touchdown heavy and you're more self-projecting guys who are going to get in the end zone. So we like half PPR. It's a bit of a balance. It evens everything out. So with my first overall pick at the top of the board here, I think that the clear-cut choice is Alvin Kamara. From this season, 21 total touchdowns. He's been one of the most versatile players in the league since he stepped foot in the NFL. And with the Saints, it fits him perfectly. I mean, Drew Brees, who knows if he's going to be the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints next season or if he'll still be in the NFL, but I think that obviously plays a huge part in it. But for now, I'm going to assume that Brees will still be there. There is a good chance he is not, though. So Kamara, like I said, dynamic. He's super explosive. I like what he does as a receiver, and that gives him great value and floor. I love my consistent players, and when you just look at safe options at the number one overall pick, I think it's really hard to go wrong with Alvin Kamara. So that's what I'll be taking here at the first spot. Erik, you're on the clock with the second pick.
All right, so we know Christian McCaffrey's been hurt, but in the games he's played, he's been very, very good. He's been very consistent, even last year when he was healthy. For the most part, he was one of the top running backs. He's catching balls. He's also getting those goal line carries. I think you have to take one of those big running backs in the first few spots.
For sure.
They're going to get you the most points out of any of the running backs. The ceiling or the floor is just really hard to reach for every running back. It's kind of, there's the big ones and then there's a big drop off. So I think you got to go after a guy like McCaffrey here at number two. I know he was number one this year, and then of course he got hurt. If he had played every game, he probably would have been up there with Kamara and Dalvin Cook.
100%. I think when you look at the top tier of running backs, almost like the ones and the 1As, if you will, I think the top three-headed monster is Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, and I think you really can't go wrong with any of them, barring a significant injury. And a quick note here, these ADPs are the same ADPs as they were at the end of draft season this offseason, so you're going to see guys like Julio Jones and whatnot be picked a little bit higher than they should have been. I think that Julio takes a bit of a hit here after seeing his injuries this season and having his age 32 season next year. So we're going to see some guys take a hit here. And so obviously the ADP and the auto-generated picks might not be as accurate as we'd like, but that'll get better and better as we keep doing these. I just think this is a really fun thing to do right away and something really interesting to talk about. So Erik, you're on the clock with your second pick here. Tell us who's available on the board.
So how I see this is, I've already got a very good running back here. I think I'm going to go receiver with Stephon Diggs. This is a half PPR league. He's gonna get the catches from Josh Allen. That's what it is there. Number one receivers are probably more important than number one running backs in a half PPR league. They're gonna get you a lot of points, especially if it's a guy like Stephon Diggs, who is one of the leading pass catchers. So I'm gonna go Stephon Diggs here. I think he's going to be really good next season if he can stay healthy. That team is going to be as good as this year, if not better, next year.
Yeah, I mean, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, it's a perfect combo. He is that true alpha in Buffalo right now, and there's not really anyone to compete with him. I mean, Cole Beasley's been a really nice prospect all season long, putting up really nice flex numbers, but he's not Stephon Diggs. I mean, he's an older player. He's a veteran. He gets the job done, but Stephon Diggs is just that all-world talent, one of the most unguardable receivers in the league. I mean, probably a top deep threat and route runner at the same time. So super versatile, and I think a guy that has an incredible ceiling as well as a really nice floor. So I think one of the things we're going to talk about coming into this season, we've done some research already, and we're not going to get too deep into the details, but we found that teams that have a safer floor opposed to a higher ceiling tend to do better in fantasy football across our leagues this year. The teams that are consistently, putting up good numbers and not having those boom bust weeks are the teams that are winning almost all of the regular season games, becoming a top 4 seed and getting in the playoffs. So if you compare a guy like CMC and Stephon Diggs with a really great floor and ceiling at the same time, that is setting up your team for great success, and I love how you started things off here, Eric. So with my second pick, I've got the option here to look at some of those other players. I think that, like we talked about, having a top-tier running back is one of the most important things, especially in a half PPR league, because the drop-off is so significant, and it's really hard to find those consistently safe players. And with this pick, I think that I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor here. And if we're being completely honest with ourselves, if we're being realistic, there is no chance that next season I think Jonathan Taylor falls to the 212. I mean, I would expect him to honestly be going late first round, if not early
late first
second.
round, yeah. And I think you can compare him in the spot where Chubb is here.
Yeah.
Chubb is one of those consistent guys, and he's not even that much of a pass catcher. He's just getting a lot of carries. The Browns run a lot. He's competing with Kareem Hunt, and yet he's still, in the games he played, producing very good numbers. So Chubb is definitely someone you should watch out for if you're not getting those higher picks. I think that he'll be mid first round, maybe late first round, just like Taylor. And if Taylor falls, or if Chubb falls, you have to take him if Taylor's already gone.
Right. I think that's a great comparison. They're both very pure running backs and great talent at that position. I think, a lot of people have talked about Nick Chubb being maybe the best pure running back in the league. Obviously, probably not the best pass catcher, but in terms of a guy who just carries the football and does everything right as a running back, he is probably that guy. I think, realistically, maybe we see Nick Chubb drafted ahead of Michael Thomas, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, some of these guys that went in front of him, but based off the ADP, like we said, they're going to see a bit of a fall. Saquon Barkley, he might even go before him. I mean, the injury history, the ACL, there's a lot of red flags there with Barkley. Not much room to run in that Giants O-line, so they're going to have to make some upgrades there. I think Kenyon Drake, we don't see go as high as he was picked here, but with my next pick here, I think I have to go wide receiver. One of the mistakes I've learned from is I have hit the running back button too many times, and there is a route where you can overdo it. I certainly think you do need an elite top 2. I think 2 of your first 3 picks should probably be running back if the opportunity is there and the value is there, but I have to go wide receiver with this pick. I need a player who's going to give me high upside and at the same time a really great floor. Some notable names off on the board, my favorite guys, Allen Robinson, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. I think in terms of pure floor, Allen Robinson is the way to go here, but I also like to sprinkle in some ceiling as well. And since I have 2 really safe running backs in JT and Alvin Kamara, I think I'm going to go with A.J. Brown here. I think he's the perfect mix of the 2. I think we see DK Metcalf has a bit of a higher ceiling, but in matchups against tough corners, he's kind of disappeared this season and had a really ugly game against Jalen Ramsey the first time around. He was pretty quiet the second time as well. And then A.J. Brown, we kind of see him. His floor isn't quite as low as Metcalf's, I would say, but his ceiling isn't quite as high either.
Yeah, so my pieces there would be the only issue with Allen Robinson is that the Bears have not re-signed him yet, which
Correct.
is something that still boggles my mind as a Bears fan because he's getting 100-plus catches, so we have to see him
You
get
have to
extended.
lock him up.
If he's that big of a part of the offense, he needs to get extended. But in fantasy, the fantasy aspect, I think the Bears will re-sign him. And if he does go to another team, he will be the number 1. There's no way a team can afford him to be a number 2.
You're not going to pay Allen Robinson to be the
So
second fiddle to somebody else.
He's gonna be the guy, and it doesn't get a lot worse than the Bears quarterback. So the quarterback room. So if he does go to a team without great quarterbacking, it's still not going to affect. He's going to get the ball.
The poor guys had Blake Bortles, Mitchell Trubisky,
and he still gets 1,000 yards.
Was he there when Mike Glennon was your starter, or did you sign him?
Oh. Yes,
I think he was. So. And then he's dealt with Tyler Braid, Nick Foles. It's been an ugly situation for Allen Robinson since the start, and he is still in my opinion, and the numbers don't lie, he's been the safest wide receiver for 2 years now. I mean, maybe Robert Woods is in that territory, but still not quite hitting his marker because he doesn't score touchdowns as much. So, A-Rob, I love him. I mean, I'd be absolutely ecstatic to get him on my fantasy team. And this year, he was one of my favorite players again.
I would be interested in getting him here, but I think I might go running back with David Montgomery here. He's really getting the rock a lot now, and he's catching as well. So half PPR, he's almost like that Jonathan Taylor. I know I'm comparing a lot of people to him, but this one's even closer because Montgomery is one of those. He breaks tackles, but he also gets the rock a little bit on those short passes, and he gets that run. After contact. I think I'm going to go David Montgomery here, pair him with Christian McCaffrey. They could both be top 10 running backs next year. So if one does get injured, I could feel safe there. So I'm going to take David Montgomery.
Yeah, I actually agree with that pick. I think that last offseason I would have 100% hated on that pick. But I think also your comparison is very valid between Chubb, Taylor, and Montgomery. I think those are all physical style runners. They're less shifty. They can juke, but it's not their first option. David Montgomery wants to run through contact and be a physical guy. And I think my biggest red flag was the run blocking from Chicago. It's obviously not great, but when you look at the fact that they have 6 games a year in their division against Minnesota, Detroit, and Green Bay, which are all below average run stops, or at least not intimidating ones at that, those give you some really good opportunity. I mean, we've seen the schedule here really open up for Montgomery. The line has been better, and he's just been running wild and is a top 5 play right now. So, as of week 17. But I think going forward into next season, you're going to get those games from him. I don't know who the Bears' opponents will be next year off the top of my head, but I assume David Montgomery is going to be highly productive again next season as a breakout here in 2020.
Yep, for sure. And we see Allen Robinson go here. Realistically, he's going to go higher. I think he would be a third rounder or maybe a second rounder. We're seeing guys like Michael Thomas go a little earlier than
I think too. Like Mark Ingram was not. There's no chance he goes in the 4th round.
No, and Dobbins might actually be a guy that goes
in the 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah, because we're expecting him to be the number 1. Ronald Jones, we're also not sure on. Same with Fournette. We're not sure exactly what they're going to do. I believe Fournette is on his contract year.
He will expire at the end of the season, I believe.
Yep. So I'm hoping as a dynasty person, I have Ronald Jones, and I'm hoping that he will be the guy. Sounding like he's going to get the ball a lot this last week.
Yeah, Bruce Arians, I mean, this video will be going up post week 17, but Bruce Arians said he wants to give, quote, Ronald Jones a ton of carries this week and touches. So, I mean, that's good news for him. I would love to see that translate into next season and carry over as the lead back, because he's shown us that when he is the guy getting 20-plus touches, he does some crazy things with the rock. So, I
think
love
he looks
Ronald
very
Jones.
good. Here, I think it's crazy if I don't take DK Metcalf in the 4th round.
I agree.
He's going to have that ceiling. I know his floor might not always be great, but there's just no one else that's comparable in that's left. We got, Odell.
Maybe Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen, yeah, because he is going to be a floor guy. Chark, you're just not sure yet, but saying that Lawrence does go there, he's going to get the ball.
His value would skyrocket if Trevor Lawrence were to be drafted by the Jags. And I think after watching the Sugar Bowl, obviously Ohio State whooped Clemson, but Trevor Lawrence still had 400 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. Yep. He was strip sacked, but his line was not playing good. I don't think one game changes how the Jags front office views him. I think Justin Fields is certainly an elite talent and might be that first Ohio State quarterback to not suck in the NFL, but I don't think it's enough to change the Jags' opinion on Trevor Lawrence and who they're taking first. You've got the opportunity to draft a player who virtually every scout and GM has said is a generational talent, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity type player. So I think there's no way we don't see Lawrence throwing the football for Jacksonville next season.
So here I'm going to go DK Metcalf. Again, he's a guy that is a super talent. He's gonna make plays. So I think you have to go with him there in the 4th round.
Yeah, and going back to our early draft process strategy here, looking for those floor players. I love the ceiling I've already paired with Taylor, Kamara, and A.J. Brown. I think there's a safe floor there as well, and I'm going to increase the safe floor opportunity I've got for myself. I'm going to pick Keenan Allen for the Los Angeles Chargers. Keenan Allen this year, obviously he's always had that injury bug. He's kind of been hampered at times. We've seen he's had some hamstrings and just some nagging injuries, but in terms of a pure wide receiver, his route running is so good. He is such a complete talent, and he's even scoring from more than 10 yards out for a guy who's not a huge target in the red zone. So he's showing us that he can pretty much get it done in any shape or form here, and leading the NFL in targets with Justin Herbert. I believe before he left with injury for the season, he had about 145 targets on the year. So Keenan Allen was just a target beast, and especially in a half PPR, he's going to rack up those reception points.
Yeah, and he's got Justin Herbert throwing to him, so it's gonna be there. He's a fantastic quarterback. I think he will maybe take a little bit of a dip, just like Mahomes did. But well, actually, Mahomes' second season wasn't as great, but his third season was when he really lit up with the 50 touchdowns. Correct? Or was it his second season?
I think his first season as a starter, he was the MVP with 50.
Okay,
Last year, he was...
And he didn't even play every game.
Right. Last year, he was like MVP runner-up to Lamar, and he had the dislocated kneecap that kept him out for 2 games, I want to say 3 games. And then he was still a beast, though. And then this year, we've really seen Kansas City kind of show some vulnerability and some weakness. And that's kind of where that's went to. So then here with my next pick, obviously picking back-to-back in the turn here, I've got myself a lot of options. I think there's a lot of question marks here with the wide receivers. I think that we've kind of secured all the guys who we know are going to be those top-end players at that position for next year. Obviously, there's some rookies down there, though. I think Justin Jefferson is a guy, notably, who is not going to be up here in ADP that I think could be a really, really solid fifth-round pick. Some other running backs up here. I mean, all these guys we're going to see rise in ADP because there's going to be some guys, of course, like we've talked about, who are going to fall drastically. I mean, Kenny Galladay barely played this season. He's going to fall. Le'Veon Bell, Leonard Fournette, not going to be guys going in the third round. Todd Gurley, not going to be going in the third round. So, I think at this spot, as a third wide receiver on my football team and a guy who I think can really be productive, I have to go with Justin Jefferson. I think if I could find him here.
He was there.
Where? Oh, I'm on running backs. That's why. There we go. Okay, I'm going to draft Justin Jefferson here with the 5-1. He's going to go higher than this in actual draft season.
I think so too, yeah.
But in terms of, for the sake of this video, I have to pick him. I think there was definitely some options here when you look at the quarterbacks with, I think, Deshaun Watson was still on the board, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen. All great options, but you can find value at the quarterback position later on. And I think a guy you can snatch up super late is Ryan Tannehill, and we'll talk about that later. But back to you, Eric.
Even Kirk Cousins, those two are almost on the same playing field. They're going to throw a lot to their receivers. They've got a great receiving core, and they have it figured out. I mean, Kirk Cousins isn't as bad as people think. He really isn't.
Kirk Cousins.
Yes, he really is a thrower. I mean, when he has pressure, he struggles a little bit.
Yes,
but he's going to throw the rock. I mean, he gets it done in that aspect. Maybe not a super clutch guy, but he's going to get the ball to Jefferson and Thielen.
In fantasy, he's very relevant.
Yes.
I think, before you pick here, Eric, I just want to say this. The Titans and the Vikings obviously don't run the same offensive scheme, but in terms of fantasy and what they do in terms of how their run game and those elite backs and Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook set up that offense, it allows play-action shots down the field, allows big plays for the wide receivers and the quarterbacks. They can't sit back in coverage because they have to have guys up in the box ready to play the run. And then talented guys like Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown for the Titans, Corey Davis, if he's there next season, they make plays. And that's really helpful for the quarterback's value. And if you're looking for floor players, Tannehill and Kirk Cousins are really safe options. Maybe not the flashiest picks in the world by far, but definitely guys that can be starters for teams.
So one guy we haven't talked about is James Robinson. Clearly he's going to be way lower on here, which is, again, the product of the app not being able to, I guess, determine what the ADP will be next year.
Right.
James Robinson would be a big steal at this point. I think he's going to go way higher.
I think he will too, assuming that Jacksonville doesn't bring in a new running back via the draft.
Yeah, so I think we'll stay away from him here, but do know that he is definitely a guy that was very consistent. He fits that mold.
Yes.
Another guy, Terry McLaurin, we just don't know because the quarterback situation has just not been good.
So washy, but he probably would have been gone at this point too. You can definitely pick Terry. But what is it, Chad Henneke that's going to be the starter for Washington this week?
Yeah, Heineke.
Yeah.
Yep, Heineke. He's interesting. He's an interesting quarterback. He seems very confident for a guy
backup.
coming in after everyone got injured
Yeah.
or cut in Dwayne Haskins' case. So I think I'm going to go quarterback here. And call me crazy, but Kyler Murray has been very, very consistent. He has the run even more than Josh Allen, which is why I would take Kyler Murray instead. I think that team's on the up. I do think the Bills are on the up too, but Kyler Murray is going to be more consistent in the running aspect, which is just going to pad his stats in fantasy and make him a little more of a safe bet.
For sure. I mean, when you look at a guy who was the quarterback one for the first month of the fantasy season, it doesn't get much better than Kyler Murray. And like you said, those legs are great. We see Dak Prescott go as another quarterback, Deshaun Watson going here. So.
I was considering him. Russell, I was staying away from. So Russell clearly this season underperformed. And again, he was taken a little earlier than he probably will be next year. Yeah. But I think he's a guy you kind of stay away from.
Eric and I have done some number crunching here, and we have found that Russell Wilson is one of the most hot and cold quarterbacks in fantasy football. Obviously, if you're starting an NFL franchise and you want to win football games, Russell Wilson is going to get the job done for you. He can win ugly games. He can win in shootouts. But from what we saw the production level be the first month and a half of the season to where it's at now, he's completely fallen off a cliff. I mean, he's the ultimate, sell high QB after the first 6 weeks of the season because he's going to decline. We even saw it last year, 2 years in a row. MVP frontrunner, hot hand, world beater the first 6 weeks of the year, and then he doesn't get an MVP vote by the end of the season because he just completely derails. So, I mean, obviously still an elite quarterback and elite talent, but in terms of fantasy down the stretch, he's not what you want to look for. Eric, you're back on the board here.
Yep, and it's not even from a lack of targets either. He's got the weapons. He's just not performing the same way he usually does. So
for sure.
Here I do want to chat about Cam Akers. We've got up there J.K. Dobbins, kind of the younger guys that are elevating.
Yeah.
I think they would have been taken earlier. We also have Zach Moss is interesting. We'll see what happens to Singletary. Antonio Gibson is another one.
That's a great pick.
Is he going to be that number one guy?
We don't know. Will Washington commit to Antonio Gibson as the leader in their backfield? I mean, in terms of a guy who, you look at Antonio Gibson and he's on a cheap rookie contract. Was he a third-round pick?
Something like that.
He was a wide receiver in college, turned running back, very dynamic player, great out of the backfield as a pass catcher, but we'll see because we see a lot of teams. They've got these scat back type guys. I think Antonio Gibson is more than a scat back in my opinion. I think he's a true, pure NFL running back. I mean, Ron Rivera even said he is going to play that Christian McCaffrey role in that Washington football team offense that he had back in Carolina. So, I think that Gibson will be the guy next season, but there is some question marks that will be answered in the draft and in free agency. And as a football fanatic, speaking for myself and Eric, it's one of the most exciting times of the season is honestly the offseason because there's so many moving pieces. There's so many entertaining things that happen, trades, free agency pickups. Everything gets shuffled up, and the NFL is a completely different ballgame the next season. So I can't wait to see what happens.
Another one I want to talk about is your A.J. Dillon for the Packers. So
go Pack, go.
It's looking like Aaron Jones he's on his contract year, right? His final year.
He is in the final year of his rookie contract.
So he could end up going to another team, which will also have fantasy implications, not just for A.J. Brown.
For sure.
Or A.J. Dillon. I liked what I saw. He's almost like that Najee kind of guy, big boy, but can catch. He did catch the ball in a game in the snow.
And he had explosive runs.
Yep. He had a very, I believe he had like six yards a carry, or
it was 5.9, I believe.
5.9,
so pretty dang close.
So he had a good day against the Titans defense, which is a decent defense. They've got some big boys up front. So that's a pretty good game for him. I like him. I think I would still go with a guy, possibly DeAndre Swift did go, but he's another one I am very interested in. I think he's going to boom next season.
I think he will as well. When he has the backfield to himself, he's going to be exceptional.
I think here I'm going to go J.K. Dobbins.
I agree with that.
He also gets those catches. I think the Ravens need to start throwing to the running backs more.
They do.
They struggle throwing to receivers. It's kind of like the Bears effect. I'm going to compare Lamar and Trubisky for the simple fact that their throwing in the pocket isn't great. When they roll out, it's fantastic, and they like to throw to tight ends, big targets. But
yes.
J.K. Dobbins should be used the same way that Montgomery's being used. He's going to help out the quarterback.
Yeah, I think J.K. Dobbins, I mean, from like we've talked about, Wisconsin Badger fans, J.K. Dobbins absolutely just abused the Badgers defense whenever they played. He absolutely lit us up in Big Ten championship games. And I thought from the moment he stepped on the field as a pure freshman, I thought he was going to be a star in the NFL. And I think that Baltimore is a perfect place for him, power run team. When he finds space, he's gone in a flash. He's very explosive. And I think he's a league winner. We're going to see his draft stock rise. I bet he's going to be around a 4th-round pick next season, especially. I'm expecting Mark Ingram to be released or honestly retire at this point because he's not really been productive this year at all. So, J.K. Dobbins, I love the pick. I think he's going to be an elite player. And then looking at the board for myself here.
Another thing we can talk about here is that we're not picking tight end. So
right.
There's these guys. Darren Waller, very consistent this season. Darren
Waller should be picked ahead of Mark Andrews and Zach Ertz next season.
Yep,
I think Zach Ertz has fallen off the map.
Yeah, Zach Ertz is not as much. Goddard is a guy you can look at later on that could. This year he struggled a little bit. Their whole team struggled.
Injuries,
truly.
really.
His consistency wasn't great this season, but. Yeah, he was on and off injured. I think he had COVID as well.
Dallas Goedert finishes as tight end 19 for the season, but in the games he did play, averaged 8 points per game in half PPR. That's a great mark to be at. If you're looking for a guy who's going to be consistent, he can at least get the job done in that sense for you. Philadelphia loves 2 tight end sets. Yep. They love throwing to the tight end because their wide receiver core, despite them picking a first-round receiver, is still not that great. I think you see teams like Philadelphia and the Ravens, not really great receiving cores, or at least developed cores at this point. I mean, I think Baltimore might have one of the worst receiving cores in the league. I mean, Marquise Brown, he's a gadget player to me. I don't think he's anything special.
We don't love those players that are more speedsters. We like the seasoned route runners coming out of college. We really like Jamar Chase. He should be good in the NFL. From everything we've seen, we look at a guy like Jefferson, who is a seasoned route runner already. He's going to do well against those, especially number 2 corners.
Yes.
In the beginning of the season, he started a little slow, and then he started getting the ball more.
Yep.
Kirk started seeing him. He started getting those plays drawn up for him.
He's great.
So he can run those
routes. His routes are ridiculous. I mean, he was drawing number 1 coverage corners at the end of the year. I believe when the Saints played the Vikings, Jefferson was getting it done against Lattimore, and that's just impressive. For a rookie to be, I mean, he wasn't exceptional by any means in that game, but like the plays that he did make were very, very good. And I think that
Which is what you want.
This for the next 5 to 7 years, it's going to be a nightmare in the NFC North to have Justin Jefferson around. But yeah, like you were saying, we like route runners, we like physical guys who can win at the point of catch. That's why I'm not so big on Devontae Smith like some people are. I think he's going to be solid, I think, but I don't think he's going to be the top receiver in this draft class like a lot of people are expecting. I really like Jamar Chase. The one red flag that I will admit to that really worries me is that he did take the year off and opt out and just declare for the draft. So I really hope he's doing what he needs to do to get ready and will hopefully benefit from that process, but not playing football for 18 months maybe. That could be a big... He might start slow.
I think he's a worker, so I think he'll do fine. Again, with the tight ends, if you're really wanting to go after a tight end, there's only really 1 or 2 that are worth taking high, and that's Travis Kelce and Waller. And even then, the gap between them is big. Travis Kelce was like a number 1 receiver this year.
Yeah.
You can take him in the 2nd round pretty comfortably. It may seem weird or it may seem uncomfortable to take him that high, but it's legit. He gets the ball so much.
I would say this about Travis Kelce. Personally, I have my worries, like you said. I have my uncomfortable moments taking him in the second round. But when you see the gap and the drop-off between Travis Kelce and the advantage he gives you in your lineup, it's ridiculous. I mean, he is so far above everyone else. I mean, Darren Waller is there, but even like George Kittle doesn't score touchdowns. And the gap is just massive.
So when he's hurt, he's not getting that ceiling.
Right.
Like in the few games, he gets yards.
If you really think about it, Travis Kelce gives you league-winning potential because at that spot, you know you're getting the best tight end in the league, and that sets you so far above at the tight end position.
You don't need to
think about it. If you can find a value wide receiver and you hit on them late on in the draft, that puts up that production that you would have picked a receiver at in the second round.
Almost one of those rookie receivers.
Yes.
If you take a guy like Jamar Chase later in a redraft league, you could maybe hit on him and he could be one of your top receivers. And then you'll feel more comfortable taking. So you have to do your research if you're going to take a guy like Travis Kelce because you're losing a big spot there. Because here we took Stephon Diggs in the second round.
We were Stephon Diggs believers last year.
So
if you pick Diggs in the 6th round this year, you're looking real good right now. I mean, we were Diggs believers. I didn't get my hands on him, unfortunately, in any leagues, but you did. It worked out great. If you can find that next guy, and by all means, we're going to be giving you guys those players that we project to be that next breakout stud this offseason. We got a lot of great stuff planned up here. I think that you're well on your way to dominating your fantasy leagues if you can find those breakout players. So finally here, I'm going to get into my pick. We just rambled, but lots of good stuff to talk about. I'm stuck between Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen here with my 6th round pick. These are both great quarterback options. Aaron Rodgers, I think we see a little bit more consistency and safety out of. Josh Allen, a little bit higher of a ceiling because we do see him run a lot. I think, there is the possibility Josh Allen gets himself another receiving weapon this offseason. It's really Diggs, and then the drop-off is pretty big. Dawson Knox, Cole Beasley, John Brown, all solid, but he could add another piece to really help him out here.
I would love to see them draft a receiver.
There's a lot of guys they could go out and get. I think I'm going to go with Josh Allen here. Just because of the way I've already constructed this team. You can see my roster here down in the right-hand corner. Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, my top 2 backs. A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, Justin Jefferson, my top 3 receivers. So I'm not really feeling the urge to pick someone there. I'm going to go with Josh Allen here and try and give my team some high upside.
Yep, so you can you've got all these floor guys. You can almost sacrifice the floor. His floor is still good.
It's good.
I mean, about like 3/4 of the time, he's going to meet his floor.
Exactly.
He's going to have more big games. So when you have guys like Jonathan Taylor and Kamara who are going to reach their floor most of the time, it's worth having a quarterback who could also boost that. Because if you're scoring that many points every week, your chances of winning the league are
exponential.
Much higher.
I mean, when you look at the ceiling of all these guys combined, it's quite nasty. I mean, even your team, you've got CMC and Montgomery. Very similar, super safe running back combo.
And Dobbins could be a top 15 running back if he does get that going. I do like how he looks for next year.
And you've got yourself Diggs, who is a extremely safe floor and ceiling play.
Yep.
Metcalf, amazing ceiling, and Kyler Murray, top 5 fantasy quarterback. So, I'm back up here with my next pick. So I've got the quarterback position covered. I think we're going to fade tight end a little longer because we've kind of missed that cutoff. It's not worth your draft investment to pick one at this point. Looking at the board here, I've got myself some really nice options at running back and wide receiver. Deontay Johnson is a stud this year. Leads the Steelers in targets by a lot.
He'll be picked higher, I believe.
For sure. 8th round pick, I believe, this past season in ADP. We're at the 7th round here, so that kind of makes sense. Otherwise, if I look at running backs, I think we see Ronald Jones, Cam Akers be solid guys. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to pick up Antonio Gibson. I just saw him. I know it's a bit later than he's actually going to go, but for who's on the board, I think that's the best option for my team.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of those running backs are in kind of the same boat. They're going to be young guys that are going to get the ball on a team that basically needs running back. So they're going to be I hope Gibson will be the number 1 guy because when he looks very good.
Yeah, he's a top offensive option for that football team.
So I've got 3 running backs here. I don't feel like I need another big one. I'm pretty confident with the 3. You got your 3rd there.
Yep.
Again, receiver is big in half PPR. So I
Right.
think I go receiver here. I think, fading tight end. Gronk, I don't know how I feel.
We don't even
Brady
know if he's
might
gonna play
not be
next year.
back. He wants Brady.
Yeah.
And if Brady's not back,
You can kiss Gronk goodbye.
Evan Ingram isn't worth picking that high. Again, Hunter Henry, maybe. I think you can still fade tight end out like that. But I think I'm going to go receiver. Michael Gallup is so boom bust. I don't know if I can
He's not
take
worth
him.
it, especially with the other players he has around him.
Odell Beckham's going to be back. So Landry, even though I have liked how he's looked this season, he's going to lose some targets.
For sure.
Will Fuller, I don't know if he is...
We don't know where he's going to be next year.
Yeah.
We don't know where he's going to land. I doubt Houston resigns him since he had the suspension to end the year, contract year, rebuilding football team. I think they find the draft for their wide receivers.
I really do like Deontay Johnson here.
I think that's your safest floor.
And Slayton, I was very disappointed with this season. Clearly had quarterback issues, but I think he's a very talented receiver. I think they need to still get one more guy there
They do.
in New York.
There's not enough weapons for Daniel Jones to work with there. His running back room is great, but...
Yeah. So I'm going to go... Yeah, and it's deep. We know now. I mean, look at all those guys they have.
Gallman, Freeman still can do something there. I mean, he's not a great option, but he can get the job done for a couple weeks.
So I'm going to go Deontay Johnson here.
I like that pick a lot. Deontay Johnson was by far my best sleeper pick in fantasy this season. I think that, in the the stretch weeks here where the games mattered most, he really showed up for my team. I know he had a bit of a down performance against Buffalo, but I stuck with him, and he scored me a lot of points the next 2 weeks. So I love Deontay Johnson for what he did for me this season.
We see Matt Ryan going here. I'm very, very, very low on Matt Ryan. Clearly, you can't only base someone's predictions for the next season off of the prior season. Clearly, he didn't have a great year, but he's getting older. I don't see him getting better. Julio's getting older, too. He's been injury-ridden. He's just... It's a struggle to take him. Calvin Ridley's very good. Matt Ryan's going to throw the ball, but personally, I love running quarterbacks for fantasy football because even if they're not having a great game, they're going to cushion and get that floor easier with their feet. So I think you stay away from a pocket passer like Matt Ryan. And the only two that I'm super confident in, Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. Even then, they both run occasionally. Deshaun Watson is a runner for the most part. So those guys are higher on my list because they can run. But Mahomes and Rodgers are just so accurate with the ball. It's best to take them if you're going to take a pocket passer.
Right. I think that was well said. I really like those guys in fantasy. I think, your top five for this coming season, in no particular order, but Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen's got to be up there, Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers. I think we can creep Deshaun Watson in there or Lamar Jackson at the back end. I think Watson takes a bit of a hit for me, though, because of what he has to work with, frankly. It's not great at all.
Yeah, so the players I'm looking at right now, I know we were talking about tight end, but a guy that's probably going to go way earlier is TJ Hawkinson. He was very consistent this year. I'm comparing him with Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry it was very good this season. He's got Herbert throwing to him as well. But I think Hawkinson is just going to get more touches. He's going to get a lot more opportunities. So I'm going to go TJ Hawkinson here.
That's a very under the radar
tight
breakout
end spot.
I think TJ Hawkinson, top 5 or 6 fantasy tight end next year. I think he takes a step forward over a guy like Zach Ertz, even, who probably won't be back with the Eagles next year. So here, I'm going to speed things up a little bit. In the back end of the draft here, things get a little bit murky. Obviously, we want to spend a lot of time talking about these top-end players.
Yeah, and this can kind of be a measuring stick of what players you should go for. Right. Clearly, there's players that are going that wouldn't be going as high this year, but guys like Kamara, McCaffrey, Diggs, Taylor, we're high on them. They weren't guys that were high last year, so you have to kind of look at those guys that broke out this season and translate that to what it may look like next season, especially with some context. Are they going to re-sign the same place? Are they going to head to another team? Is there going to be new competition? So we don't know who's going to go where. There might be some running backs drafted to certain teams that take value down on certain players like Gibson. So maybe we see the the Washington football team pick a running back.
It's possible. I mean, anything can happen. So at this next pick here, I'm looking to add some depth to my wide receiver position. And like I said, not too much analysis here, trying to speed the video up a little bit, but it's between Jamison Crowder and Brandon Ayuk for me. I think that for a team that doesn't really have much receiving talent, we didn't really see Denzel Mims pop too much this year. I think the safest pick here in the 8th round is probably Jamison Crowder, but I really like what Ayuk can do. I think he's really versatile, and at the end of the day, I think that I trust Kyle Shanahan more than I trust Adam Gase, who probably won't be there next season.
I pray that he is not there.
Regardless, I'll take Ayuk here in the 8th round.
A Jets supporter.
And then honestly, I have a back-to-back pick here, so I could just go out and grab Crowder anyways. So I think that's what I might do here. Otherwise, I've got some options. I could go with a handcuff play in Darrell Henderson for Cam Akers, but I think it's a little too early to take a handcuff, especially in a committee-type system. So I think I'll take a look here at my running backs one more time and just make sure there's not anyone else out here. I mean, A.J. Dillon's available. I could project him and try to keep my positions even here and project him to be the Packers starter next year, because I don't think, as a Packer fan, we have enough money to re-sign Aaron Jones, so I'll take A.J. Dillon with my 9th round pick.
I think Nyheim Hines would be a great handcuff for me to get here. He really gets the ball a lot. I don't know if it's going to be the same volume next year, but
I believe
really
Marlon
like
Mack is still under contract, unfortunately. That might be an ugly situation.
Do you think they cut him?
They might trade him. Let me look into that. Make your pick, and I'll look up Marlon Mack's
I'm still going to take
contract.
Nyheim Hines. He's getting a lot of catches. Marlon Mack's not a guy that's going to get catches, and we know Jonathan Taylor's the lead back. So I'm going to take Nyheim Hines as my handcuff. I might take Gus Bus as well as a handcuff. He still gets the ball a decent amount, especially on the goal line, but I think we're going to see Dobbins get the ball a lot more next year.
Okay, this is actually big news. Marlon Mack is an unrestricted free agent this offseason.
That's
fantastic. I thought he had one more year on his contract, so
I feel bad for Marlon Mack because I know he is a decent running back, but Jonathan Taylor is a more solid back. He's not
he is the future of the Colts.
He's not only a pure runner, he can also catch.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor is the route that team wants to go, and for a guy who ruptured his Achilles week 1, I think you almost see a Jordan Howard-esque de-evolution of his value here. I mean, Jordan Howard could still be a 1,000-yard rusher, in my opinion, if you give him 250 touches, because he goes forward every single play. But I think that you look at those guys as not explosive runners, guys who just get the job done. And I think their careers as starting running backs are pretty much over.
I agree with that. I look at a guy like Anthony Miller, and I think he's not worth taking this high when he's only getting a few catches a game. If he was getting more catches, I think it would be worth it. This might even be, we don't have rookies in here, but this might even be a spot where you take one of those rookies you really want.
For sure.
I like T. Higgins. I don't know, again, if he's worth this much this high. And Rager, I'm not thinking he's going to be up there, but I think Crowder would be a safe one. If they can put some pieces on the O-line, protect Sam, hopefully Sam is their quarterback.
I hope so as well. Yeah, I think they might go Fields, though, at this point, after what we saw.
Even then, if Fields is throwing to Crowder, I think it's a good deal.
You have to get him some offensive pieces. It's okay. I think it's better off to develop a quarterback. You want to surround them with a good defense, but at least in terms of the development of Sam Darnold, what we saw as fatal flaw is that he had nothing to work with his entire time with the Jets. And at least you can address the defensive side of the ball through free agency and the draft. But if you at least make an effort to give them some help off the bat, I think it does a lot for the development. So another unrealistic pick for me here, I actually saw not too long ago, Robbie Anderson was still on the board. Robbie, he's supposed to... He really did well this season. He was very unexpected. There's also guys like Chase Claypool at the wide receiver position still, among others that are some sleepers. But I think Chase Claypool might take a step forward, and I actually think I'm just going to, for the fun of it, take him here just to kind of project him to move into that number 2 spot. I think Big Ben loves his guys like Deontay Johnson. They're those quick route runners and those really dependable guys. But I think as a just physical and dominant player at the point of attack, Chase Claypool would be a step better as next season.
I am very interested in Joe Burrow as well.
Yeah.
He wasn't fantastic in the games that he was in. I want to see them put some alignment in there, because I think if he had more protection, I mean, he's getting sacked like 3 or more times a game.
His line is awful.
And he did well with what he had. He didn't have a lot. He didn't have a great floor, but he did have some really good games against decent teams. And I think that he's someone you should look at for fantasy. He might even be able to get him lower, just because he did get hurt. He only played a few games. But again, this is where maybe rookies, like even Lawrence, could be taken.
Right.
Kind of a sleeper quarterback pick. We saw Herbert turn into that this year. I was not high on him at all, but look at him. He's one of the top fantasy quarterbacks, meeting his floor a lot.
I think he's already a top 12 quarterback in fantasy as a second-year player.
He is.
I mean, he was exceptional as a rookie and just get the job done. So, 11th round here, 11.1 pick for me. I'm looking at tight end now. I think it's time where the value is there.
Yep.
And there's some of these guys I really like. I'm looking at Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, Jonnu Smith, all guys who had flashes this season. And I think what it comes down to for me is that Noah Fant is the most talented guy on the board, but he's had nagging injuries, and he can't stay healthy. I don't trust Drew Lock until he sees some more development and some more maturity as a quarterback. I think he's a big red flag. And then Mike Gesicki, though, he's got Tua, who is already a very veteran-esque safe quarterback. He's not making explosive plays yet, which is understandable because he's young, but he likes that big body in Mike Gesicki, and we've seen him have some really big games. So I'm going to go Gesicki here. I think Jonnu Smith was a little bit unreliable at times. He had a super high ceiling but a low floor.
Yep.
So I think Gesicki, really, really has a breakout season if Tua starts the full 16 next year.
I like that pick there. I think that... Let me think. I mean, Matthew Stafford is just always hurt, but he's been very, very good when he's in. He deals with those injuries. He's a guy that you're gonna get as many games as you can out of him, even if he gets hurt. There's guys who do not play when they're just having nagging injuries, but he gets through it. Even if he's on the Lions, he still tries his best to win some games. Otherwise, there are guys. Yeah, you got Henderson there. Tony Pollard is also interesting, but we think that Zeke's going to have a really good season after having Dak return. He's going to play way better. When Dak was in, Zeke looked far better. His stats were fantastic. But once Dak went down, Zeke started going down too.
It's not even a matter of he's not the same player he once was. He has regressed. He is not the same dominant running back that he was. But he's still a highly talented player. And what we saw this year out of Dak and Zeke that we've never seen them before is the pass catching. And Zeke was a very good receiver, very good check down option. He did have issues with fumbles this year that kind of killed him at times. But overall, Zeke was just really dependable when Dak was in those first 6 games. And he's only really had 2 good games since Dak was out of the lineup. But you know, prior to that, he was a top 5 back.
What do you think about Chase Edmonds here?
Chase Edmonds, I'm a big fan of. I drafted him in a lot of teams this year. He was really good for a stretch for me as a flex play. And, you know, I think that there's the potential that the Cardinals don't want to sign Drake to a contract and bring him back. And if they don't find the means to draft a running back, you could be looking at a potential lead back next season. I don't think it's the most likely outcome in the world, but Chase Edmonds is a very strong streamer.
I would probably just go with Robbie Anderson here. I know he's going to be taken higher.
For sure. He would have been long gone.
But he's going to have that boom. So it's worth having him once you have these kind of players already. It's you could put him in your flex. He could even be a number 2 because, again, he's going to be picked higher. But I do like Robbie Anderson.
Yeah. Get into some kickers now. Being gone off the board. Justin Tucker's going. Big Ben just went. Mike Williams, Joe Burrow. Back to Erik now with the 12-11.
I know it would be crazy to take defense. I don't know if there's enough defenses we're confident about right now. We had the Colts and the Steelers looking really consistent, but are they going to get you a lot of points? No. With the defense, you're looking for maybe less of a floor meeting, but you also want big weeks. If you get 0 points out of your defense, you're not super angry. You're going to be like, well, that's all right. If you're getting a lot of points like the Patriots did last season, you're very satisfied.
Right.
Even if they did have some games that were down. Kickers as well. You look at Younghoe Koo, and he's getting a lot of points.
Right.
And that team gets in the zone to score, and then they fail. And so they have to kick. So you want to look at players like that. So I may go Younghoe Koo here.
Yeah, I think that, if you can get the leading point scorer in the NFL, that's pretty solid. There's some defenses I like. I traditionally like to wait a little bit longer, but since this is only 15 rounds, I've got every position in my starting lineup filled. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to go with the defense here. I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are available, but I think when San Fran gets healthy next season, I really like Robert Saleh and that defensive scheme. So I'd take the 49ers every day of the week. They have the best front seven in the NFL when they're healthy. Mm-hmm. And we saw in 2019 they used 8 teams alive. So even with some tough division games, I still love that football team.
Yep.
I think it's also a solid spot here. I can wait to pick a kicker. I think it's a nice opportunity to look at a backup quarterback.
Yep.
I love going Ryan Tannehill here. I think when you look at a guy who has a pretty decent floor, it's not as great as it could be, but the ceiling is exceptional. We've seen him have 5 touchdowns in a game this year against the Lions, and he has been a passer. Him and A.J. Brown, very good connection. Him and Corey Davis have been solid. And down near the red zone, he tends to run sometimes too. So one of my favorite under-the-radar quarterbacks and a very, very, very underrated player all season long.
Clearly, we got Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert and Tua here. They're guys that I think are going to go much higher.
They'll be gone.
Tua a little later. I'm not going to pick one of them, but Herbert's a guy you want. I think Hurts is a very good fantasy quarterback. He has the legs. He ran for 100 yards against the Saints. He also can throw. He's pretty accurate, especially on those contested catches in that short window, that small window, kind of like Fitzmagic. He's actually one of the leaders in that stat. If you didn't know that, a little Fitzmagic fact for you. Anyway, I would say... did Kirk Cousins go? No, we have Kirk Cousins. So, again, like we said earlier, Kirk Cousins, not actually that bad, especially for fantasy. He's going to throw a lot. So, and he's got a great running back to help him stay grounded. Plus, even the backup, you got Alexander Madison, who is a very good backup. So, they're never going to be having issues with running. So, I think you go Kirk Cousins here. Again, those other players would have been picked earlier, and Drew Lock I'm not super high on. Again, he's got to develop. He's a little boom bust, so I would stay away from him.
I love the weapons he's got to work with, but he's too much of a risk. So it looks like we got 2 rounds left. Erik, you need a defense still.
Yep.
And I need to pick a kicker with my last 2 picks. So wind things up here. It's been a long video, but hope you guys enjoyed. I'll get our last couple picks and head out of here.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a very good floor defense. I think Steelers will actually be better next year. They'll have some of their guys back, like Devin Bush, who's been he probably would have been in the running for defensive player. Although on the same team, there's T.J. Watt, who has basically led the league in all of the pass rushing stats.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go with the Buccaneers. I think they're just gonna stay consistent. They stop the run.
Yeah. I really like what Tampa does. Really good run stop, like you said. They have a good pass rush at times. Shaq Barrett has been a bit streaky this year, but he's still a guy who can get after the quarterback. And I think if they draft another guy,
I think they should draft
they're
one more
looking
pass
pretty
rusher.
Good. Kicker here. I'm actually going to wait till my last pick. It doesn't really matter because I have back-to-back picks, but I'll pick a kicker with my second pick. I could go backup tight end, but I don't love carrying 2 tight ends, especially when you can just stream one right now in today's league, with them being more and more used. I look at the running backs, and, the first thing I saw, to be honest, was there's a pretty good handcuff at the top of the board in Boston Scott, and for a guy like Miles Sanders, who's missed a lot of time this year, I think that might be a solid option as a guy who you can plug in every once in a while. So I'll go Boston Scott there as my last official player. Accidentally pulled him up on the screen here. I'll draft Boston Scott. And then for my kicker, good old Packers reliable Mason Crosby is who I'll pick with my final selection.
All right, so here I can basically go any cushion here for any position. Sometimes you do like to carry 2 defenses. That's a thing I do like doing. Clearly this is 15 rounds. But another defense I do like is Steelers. I mean, Dolphins defense is also a really big one. Clearly they're not getting picked here. Chiefs was very consistent. Colts were very consistent this year. Even the Packers were a pretty decent defense. I think about like 2/3 of the time they're going to meet their floor. I would just go with probably the Dolphins here. They're going to get a lot of those points, big games. Sometimes they do give up a bunch of points, but I think that they're a good team here.
I really like the Dolphins. They're ball hawks, and they get the job done. So I guess that will conclude our mock draft for today. It was a bit, skewed because we saw those players, like we said, the ADPs weren't all that great. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We're going to be coming out with a lot of great Dynasty content this offseason, lots of mock drafts. We're going to even be doing some real mock drafts for the actual NFL draft with all 32 teams. Obviously not just fantasy focused. So we're going to be doing defensive players and whatnot. Probably not individual defensive players for fantasy, but just about every other subject we'll be hitting here and getting you guys set up to be great players in 2021. So thank you guys so much for watching again and watching today's video. We hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.